Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have so many class changes to talk about this week, which isn't too surprising considering patch 10.1 is almost here. It's usually rapid fire right near the end, and 10.1 is no exception. There are so many buffs and nerfs, and some classes that hadn't seen any changes yet are finally getting some love. So if you've been waiting and waiting for some of those juicy buffs to come your way, your wait is almost over. We also have quite a few changes to how loot is going to work in 10.1, including even more ways to earn tier gear and how you can roll on gear. There's also a large sweeping change to monster damage and player health, and even some new enchants to look at. So let's break everything down and see what's been going on this week in WoW. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Let's start by going over all of these crazy class changes and all these buffs and nerfs, but to kind of set the stage for this week, we need to talk about the big nerf coming in for healers. All monster damage is going to be increased by 25%, and player health pools will be increased by 25% as well. So you shouldn't necessarily see a massive difference in your personal survivability. You will still die in the same number of hits or the same amount of time, but what this does change is how hard healers have to work to keep everyone alive and healthy. With monsters dealing more damage and health pools being larger, healers will have to work that little bit harder to offset the incoming damage and keep those larger health pools full. We saw pretty much this exact broad sweeping change at the beginning of Dragonflight, and I guess the dev team feels like healing is still too powerful because here we are again. That kind of sets the stage for this week's round of class changes too, so keep that 25% healing nerf in mind as we go through the specific class changes. Let's go through in alphabetical order, that's never failed us before, so we're starting with the Death Knights. Blood Draw healing was increased by 25%, so straight up offsetting that healing nerf. For Blood specifically, Blood Plague healing and Relish in Blood healing were also increased by 25%, and Leech from Voracious was bumped up to 12%. For Frost, the 2-set bonus was nerfed down to 30%, and the 4-set bonus was nerfed down to 20%. For Unholy, the 4-set was nerfed down to just 1 stack instead of 2 stacks, and in addition to that, Unholy will also see some bug fixes. Gargoyle strike damage was reduced, Reaping bonus damage was buffed, Festering Wound, Scourge Strike and Clawing Shadows and Death Call damage were all increased, and then the 2-set bonus was buffed to give an extra 5 seconds of duration. Next up, the Demon Hunters have a few changes too. For Havoc, Fodder to the Flame was nerfed, Serrated Glaive was buffed to also increase Throw Glaive damage, Accelerating Blade was renamed and it will also be buffed up to 60% increased damage. For Vengeance, Fell Devastation healing was increased, Healing from Frailty was buffed up too, Feast of Souls, Revel in Pain, The Hunt, Healing from Soul Fragments, Charred Warblades, Soul Barrier and bonus absorb values from Soul Fragments were all buffed up too, so again trying to offset that earlier change that nerfed healing. Moving on, Druids have a lot of changes too. For Balance, Regrowth, Swift Mend, Rejuvenation, Wild Growth and Protector of the Pack were all buffed up 50% or 25%, Starfall damage was nerfed by 5%, Full Moons generated by Orbit Breaker now generate 80% astral power, and Starfire will deal reduced damage beyond 8 targets, so that's a big nerf to their overall AoE potential. For the Feral Druids, all of those healing buffs are also included, though interestingly the regrowth buff will not apply to PvP. Then we also have a 2% buff for Shred, Rake, Swipe, Brutal Slash and Thrash damage. Lunar Inspiration was also buffed up, the 2-set was given an additional 5 seconds onto its duration, Thrashing Claws was nerfed slightly, Dreadful Bleeding Rip damage was buffed up slightly, and then Tear Open Wounds damage conversion rate was also reduced. For Guardian, all of those same healing buffs, but with another buff for Lunar Beam healing as well. Elune's Favored was also buffed up to 40%, Brambles will reflect an additional 25% damage, and Ursoc's Fury was also buffed up to 60% of damage dealt, up from 50%. Up next we have Evokers with some changes for Devastation. Feed the Flames will trigger after 9 pyres down from 12, Snapfire damage bonus was increased up to 100%, Shattering Star cooldown was increased by 5 seconds, Scintillation's energy surge power was reduced down to 50%, and then Living Flame, Emerald Blossom, Verdant Embrace and Panacea were all buffed up by 25%. Moving on to the Hunters, Rejuvenating Wind was nerfed down to 8% and 16%, for Marksmanship in the Riven was nerfed down to 12%, and Windrunner's Guidance only grants 6 seconds of True Shot down from 10. For Survival, the 2-set bonus was nerfed slightly, and the 4-set bonus was nerfed by quite a lot. And then we come to the mages. Mages finally have some changes in 10.1, and holy cow, what a list. For Arcane, Radiant Spark duration was increased, Touch of the Magi duration was increased, Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, and Arcane Barrage have also all been buffed up, and then the 2-set bonus was doubled and the duration was increased. For Fire, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Fireball, and Scorch damage were all increased, Improved Combustion was buffed up, and Improved Scorch will last for 4 seconds longer. For Frost, Glacial Assault, Comet Storm, Snowstorms, Cone of Cold damage, Frozen Orb damage, and Blizzard damage were all increased. Brain Freeze will also further increase the damage of Flurry, and the 2-set bonus was also buffed up. So lots of buffs for every mage spec, which will hopefully give them a nice little boost as we head into patch 10.1. Monks are up next, and they have a whole bunch of healing buffs as you might expect. For Brewmaster, Soothing Mist, Chi Burst, Chi Wave, Expel Harm, Staggering Strikes, and Celestial Brew were all adjusted by 25%. In addition to that, Vivify Healing was increased by 92%, and Celestial Fortune was buffed up to 80% of amount healed instead of 65%. For Mistweaver, Chi Cocoon was nerfed slightly, and the 2-set bonus has been given a short internal cooldown. For Windwalkers, we see the same healing bonuses, except Expel Harm was buffed up by 75%, and Vivify received that same 92% buff. Moving on, we come to the Paladins. There are quite a few bug fixes for general talents and effects. Protection got buffs to Moment of Glory, Bulwark of Order, Light of the Titans, Word of Glory, and Flash of Light. Retribution will see similar healing buffs, 50% on Word of Glory and Flash of Light. Light Serenity was nerfed down to a 20% bonus. Guided Prayer was also nerfed down to a 60% effectiveness. Just to Cause Vengeance will only heal for 5% of max health down from 6, and there's a bug fix right at the end there. Priests have quite a few changes too. For Holy, Dazzling Light's healing from Divine Image was reduced by 50%, Empowered Renew now only triggers when casting Renew, and Empowered Renew was buffed up to 40% of its total periodic effect, up from 10%. Healing Chorus has also been buffed to provide a 2% stacking bonus, up from 1%. And then for Shadow Priest, Psychic Link was nerfed down to 30% damage from 40%, Mastermind was buffed up to 20% and 40% from 13 and 25, and then Shadow also has some healing buffs too, 25% on Power Word Shield, Renew, and Prayer of Mending, with a 50% increase to Flash Heal. For the Shamans, Elemental has a bunch of healing buffs. The 2-set was nerfed to every 50 seconds, up from 40 seconds, and the 4-set was nerfed down to 75% more Maelstrom, down from 100%. In addition to those changes, Lava Surges triggered from Primordial Surge increased the damage of your next Lava Burst by 15%, down from 25%. Primordial Surge's damage bonus is no longer reduced in PvP combat, and then we also have buffs to Lava Burst, Elemental Blast, Earth Shock, and Lightning Bolt, but none of them will apply to PvP. For enhancement, all ability and pet damage is increased by 5%, so that's across the board for pretty much everything you're going to do. Healing Surge, Earth Shield, Chain Heal, and Healing Stream Totem all had their healing increased, while Improved Maelstrom Weapon was slashed in half, and then the 4-set bonus was nerfed down to a 20% bonus and only affects 2 Chain Lightnings, so a bit of a nerf there. And last but not least, we come to the Warriors. Ignore Pain was buffed up by 25%, Pain and Gain was nerfed slightly, and there's a bug fix for Spear of Bastion. For Arms, Storm Wall was nerfed slightly. For Fury, Invigorating Fury was nerfed down to 15%, and there's a bug fix for Onslaught. For Protection, Fueled by Violence was buffed up to 110% damage of Deep Wounds. The 2-set bonus was changed to 2 seconds cooldown reduction, up from 1, and the 4-set had its duration doubled as well. Now remember that these are just the changes for this week, so if your class or spec isn't here, that just means you didn't get any meaningful changes with this week's PTR builds. With how rapid fire class changes are coming right now, there's still a chance to see more buffs or nerfs before 10.1 goes live, and as I mentioned earlier, expect to see a lot of balance tuning in the first few weeks of the patch. Now moving on, one very interesting addition in this week's build is a brand new weapon enchant for healers. The Spore Tender enchant gives you a chance for your healing spells to increase your target's secondary stats. On the PTR, the rank 3 quality enchant can increase stats by 2400 for 20 seconds, which seems absolutely insane. In terms of group throughput and efficacy, I don't think any healer in any kind of group content would run anything but this enchant on their weapon. If you have 4 or 5 5 healers in your raid group and each one of them is running this enchant, that's a big chunk of your raid that can benefit from a big boost of secondary stats. But right now it just seems too powerful, so I wouldn't be surprised if this did get nerfed before the patch goes live. It's also interesting that this enchant doesn't really give the healer any power boost to work with or benefit from. It provides more of a support role, which is kind of cool, but to take that role you will give up some personal power in the form of whatever enchant you would typically use. In addition to that, this will also introduce all sorts of RNG for DPS meters, logs, burn phases, push phases. It's just a big RNG factor for your group's potential output, which will definitely frustrate some folks. Personally, I think more support options are interesting and could be really fun, but I would like them to be implemented in a way that rewards deterministic play rather than just randomly buffing people. On that note, I am really excited to see what becomes of this third Evoker spec theory crafting that's been going around, because it could very well end up being a support spec. But what do you think of this enchant and its potential? Do you hope we see more support options in WoW? And what would your perfect support role or class look like? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Moving on, we also have quite a few changes to how loot is going to work in 10.1. To start with, the trading timer on loot will be doubled to 4 hours. So if you want to hold on to a piece of gear you got and maybe trade it later on to one of your group members, you will now have 4 hours to do that instead of the previous 2 hours, so you have a bit more time to decide whether or not you really need the item you won. There is a catch here though. The 4-hour timer will now also include time your character is offline. Previously, you could log out and the 2-hour timer would only progress when that character was actually logged into the game. That will no longer be the case. It will be 4 hours from the moment you loot the item, whether you are logged in or not, so be sure you handle any gear trading before you log off just to make sure you don't end up forgetting. Now, something you may have missed that was just very recently added into 10.1 is the new transmog roll option, which changes how you can roll on loot. This seems to be pretty straightforward. If you can use the transmog of an item that drops and you need that transmog, you'll have a transmog roll option instead of the greed roll option. This is kind of like greed plus, because from what I understand, all transmog rolls are more valuable than any greed roll. So loot will be distributed to the need rolls first, then transmog rolls after, and then greed rolls last. So if you still need the transmog for any items that drop, you'll have a better chance of getting the transmog if no one rolls need on that piece of gear. If no one needs the transmog, it should pass through to greed rolls as it would have previously. It is an interesting change, and it should help all the transmog hunters out there get their desired pieces faster and more reliably, especially when you're pugging, or at the very least you're going to get it before someone who will literally just vendor it at their next opportunity. Another big loot change will give pretty much everyone easier access to their new tier set pieces in Season 2. Tier gear will still drop in the raid as per usual, the weekly vault will still give you a chance at tier gear from every potential reward row, including Mythic Plus dungeons and PvP related rewards, and then the revival catalyst will fire up later on down the road to let you specifically create tier gear, so all of those sources are still in play. But we also have some additional sources of tier gear which give you even more control over what tier pieces you can get to complete your sets as quickly as possible. To start with, a new achievement. The Season 2 Master achievement can be earned from clearing the new raid on Heroic mode, getting up to 2000 Mythic Plus rating, or reaching the rank of Challenger 2 in rated PvP. Your reward is the Draconic Mark of Mastery, a new token which can be turned into an NPC for a tier set piece of your choice with Heroic raid item levels. So no matter what type of content you enjoy, raiding, Mythic Plus or PvP, as long as you're pushing yourself and you reach those milestones, you will get a guaranteed piece of Heroic tier gear, and you get to choose which piece you get. So that's one piece of tier gear everyone can get in a wide variety of ways. You can only get one of these per character though, so it will probably be best to use this to secure your 2 set or 4 set bonus, or to get one of the harder to obtain tier set pieces in the raid. But it goes even further than that. The last boss of the raid will also always drop a special item called Void Touched Curio. This item is special because it's a token turn-in for tier gear, but it has neither a gear slot specification nor class restrictions on it, so everyone can roll on it and turn it in for any piece of tier gear they wish. Maybe it's the last item someone needs for their 4 set, or your raid just hasn't had any Mage leg tier tokens drop. Whatever the case may be, this so-called Omni token will help you you fill in the gaps that bad RNG can cause when it comes to collecting your 2 and 4 set bonuses. With it always dropping from the last boss on every kill, that also massively increases the value of killing the last boss in the raid, which reduces the chances of players and guilds ignoring the last boss in favour of progressing on the next tier of difficulty, or just skipping over it because it's too difficult, which we have seen in the past. Both Sylvanas and the Jailer from the Shadowlands expansion immediately come to mind, so it looks like the dev team have learned that lesson. The last boss should be the most valuable in my opinion, so I'm glad that these tokens will help on that front as well. All in all, we're going to have so many different ways to obtain tier gear in patch 10.1 and season 2 of Dragonflight that I imagine most folks, especially the raiders, will get their 4 set bonus way faster than in previous seasons, so you'll be able to ramp up your character's power level faster than ever. But that's all of the updates this week, so that's it for this video. What do you think of these guaranteed sources of tier gear and potentially getting your 4 set bonuses much faster? How about all of those class changes? Are there any classes that you feel still need attention that didn't get it this close to 10.1? Who are they and why do you think they need buffs or nerfs? Let me know in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.